To get into a godly relationship with someone, you first have to be able to talk to the opposite sex. While the Bible certainly doesn't have a go-to passage that's going to teach you how to talk to the opposite sex, there are many principles that can help us in this area. So here are 3 biblical principles that can help you have great conversations with someone from the opposite sex. Also, today is the final chance to enroll in the 5-course bundle at the reduced tuition cost at AGW University, which is where I offer my biblical relationship training courses for Christian singles who want to glorify the Lord in marriage one day. This is not a magical formula. This is an opportunity to study deeply what the scriptures talk about when it comes to relationships. So if you want help preparing your heart, identifying the right person, and knowing how to best interact with the opposite sex, all from a biblical perspective, feel free to click the link in the description of this video and you'll be able to see what this is all about. Number 1, to have meaningful conversations with the opposite sex, you have to first be pursuing those things that give you meaning. I believe that the best way to have a great conversation with someone from the opposite sex is not to try to adapt yourself and have a great conversation with a particular person at any cost. Rather, you want to start by finding the right type of people where it's easy for you to have conversations with those people. In other words, to have great conversations with people, it's less about changing yourself to adapt to them and have a great conversation, and it's more about finding those people that understand you and that you have common ground about. Conversations just happen naturally and are a lot easier when 2 people know what they have in common. And that's what C.S. Lewis's point was in what he states in his book called The 4 Loves. Friendship arises out of mere companionship when 2 or more of the companions discover that they have in common some insight or interest or even taste which the others do not share, and which till that moment each believed to be his own unique treasure or burden. The typical expression of opening friendship would be something like, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." So rather than looking at someone random and then trying to figure out how to have a great conversation with them, it's way better to pursue those things that you're passionate about. Live a meaningful life, pursue those desires that you have, and then look around to see who's also pursuing those desires. A biblical example of this can be seen between Jacob and Rachel. So the first time they met was when Jacob was talking to a group of shepherds at the well. And then they said, "Hey, there's Rachel coming, and she's a shepherdess." And then once they made their connection there, later on in the story, we find out that Jacob has a gift with livestock and with the sheep, and he ends up managing Rachel's father's flock. And so it's no unreasonable stretch to assume that Jacob and Rachel had a lot of meaningful conversations about sheep, since they both had experience in this area, interest, and it's what they were using as their livelihood. So without a common bond connecting 2 people, it's very hard to have a meaningful, great conversation. Number 2, to have a good conversation with someone from the opposite sex, you can always start with the environment that you're both in right now. So asking someone a question about the environment that you're both in right now is a good place to start, because it's not totally random. Remember, like we just talked about in point 1, relationships work best when you have a common bond. And when you don't know somebody, you don't know what you might have a common bond about, but you do both know that you're standing in the same place at that exact moment, and thus the atmosphere and the environment that's currently around you is a common link. I think this is what Jesus did when he was talking to the woman, the Samaritan woman in John 4. If you remember, he has a meaningful conversation with her, obviously not romantic or anything like that, which is kind of the context we're talking about, but you can see this principle here where Jesus engages this Samaritan woman by talking about his thirst, talking about the water, the well, and that's where he starts. And then it blossoms into a more meaningful theological conversation. It ends up going to her heart and her current sin patterns. And, it all started, though, by having a common bond of being in the same location. Jesus asked her for a drink, and that's what started the ball rolling. So after you introduce yourself to someone, it's wise to then try to ask open-ended questions about the environment that you're in. So you don't want to ask closed-ended questions where it's just like a rote one-word answer. So instead of saying, "Hey, how long have you been going to this church?" That's going to be a very 5 years, 1 month. That's not a great conversation starter. Rather, you could say something like, "Hey, I'm new here. What are some ways that you've gotten connected with people? What do you think I should do to get to know some people?" That might then lead them to talk about their favorite ministry or their small group or their current friends or some monthly thing the church does. And it gives you an opportunity to talk about something. So another example would be, "Hey, what's your name?" That's not good. That's just too upfront. It doesn't lead anywhere. Rather, you would want to say something like, "Hey, my name's Adam. I saw you working at the small group table, and I'm interested in a small group and was wondering if you could, maybe point me in the right direction, what you might think be a good fit for me." And then, obviously, this person's going to ask you, "Oh, well, where do you live? What are you looking for? What days of the week?" And you just have a much better place to have a more meaningful conversation that might spark some other avenues to talk about. And number 3, to have a great conversation with someone from the opposite sex, use verbal affirmation and don't hide the fact that you might actually be interested in them. So to explain this point, try to take a step back and think about those times where it's easy for you to talk to someone from the opposite sex. And for most Christian singles, that occurs when there's not a romantic interest and they're not physically attracted and they meet somebody or they've been friends with someone and it's just very natural. They have a conversation. They keep it casual with this person because they're being honest. They want to keep it casual and they're not hiding their feelings. They're like, "I don't like you that way." But they're not like saying that in a rude way, but they're not projecting that vibe and they're just being friendly because that's what they want to do. And likewise, a lot of times people get nervous, a little bit awkward, is because they're not naturally expressing their true feelings, which is they actually like this person, they're actually interested, and they try to hide all that and they try to play it cool. And ironically, if you just are honest and you aren't afraid of showing a little interest, it relaxes you because you're not being fake about it, so to speak. You're just, hey, you like this person. You like when they talk to you. Show it. Smile, laugh, have a good conversation. And it's really self-defeating in a lot of ways when Christians try to make sure the other person knows they don't like them. It's ironic, it's like a lot of Christian singles end up sending the wrong message to people they don't like because they act so casual. And then, why do people keep thinking I like them or pursuing me if you're a woman? Because I don't like these guys. And then the guys you do like, you get all clammy and nervous and awkward around them because you're thinking about liking them. And so, Christians get this all twisted up. They're very casual and talk to the people they don't like, and then they shut down and are very guarded towards the people they do like. So to cut to the chase here, I'm not saying that you should go up to someone and profess your love. I'm not saying you should openly, verbally say, "I like you," when you just meet somebody and you're not ready to take that step. Rather, I'm saying that it's good if they see your happiness. It's good if they see you smile. And if you start talking to a woman more, if you're a guy, she might notice that and realize you like her. And that's not bad. Jesus said in John 8:32, the truth will set you free. Of course, that's a much deeper truth than what we're talking about. Jesus is talking about the gospel and being right with God in truth, and that's going to set you free from sin and have a relationship with Him. But there's a principle there that does apply to life. When you're just living in the truth, it sets you free inside to just be yourself. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the deadline to enroll in AGW University does close tonight at 11:59 p.m. I'm not promising you lavish blessings if you enroll in these courses. However, what I can promise you is that if you're in a season where you're prepared to work hard and learn what Scripture says about relationships and how to best interact with the opposite sex, then you will grow immensely by enrolling in these courses. And while I would never claim that I have some secret marriage formula that if you follow, it's definitely going to get you married in this amount of time, I'm not claiming that, but I have created a wise blueprint that's definitely going to help you find some structure and wisdom and clarity on how to best interact with the opposite sex and meet, date, and possibly marry the person God may have for you. And I believe so much in the biblical information packed into these courses that I offer a 14-day money-back guarantee. Everything you paid to enroll, you can instantly get back if you don't like what you're seeing. No questions asked. To look at all the course topics before enrolling, feel free to click the link in the description of this video. I'm Mark from ApplyGodsWord.com. Until next time, God bless.